We have new information in the investigation into the Maine paddleboarder who was murdered after she went missing on a quiet pond roughly 2 weeks ago. We now know the type of person police may be looking for in their search for a killer. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Not only are we learning more about how police are reportedly looking for suspects in the case involving Sunshine Stewart, we're also learning more reportedly about where her body was found. This is per new reporting out today from the Mid-Coast Villager, which is a media outlet that covers the part of Maine where all of this took place. Let's get you caught up on what happened before I get to those new details. It was on July 2nd, so roughly 2 weeks ago, that Maine State Police say that Sunshine Sunny Stewart left her campground near Union, Maine to go paddleboarding on Crawford Pond. They say she left her campground between 6 and 9 p.m. Then, hours later, around 1 o'clock in the morning, after she didn't return and law enforcement was called, her body was found. Her body was found on an island at the center of Crawford Pond, and an autopsy ruled that she had been murdered. Crawford Pond is not a massive body of water. You can see it here on this map. It's in a quiet part of Maine, about an hour and a half from Portland, and it's home to both year-round and seasonal residents, people who come to just enjoy a summer in New England. Sunny, according to friends, had planned to spend much of her summer at Crawford Pond. She had rented a camper. She was staying at this campsite, which was located on the north side of the pond. Now, even though state police in Maine are saying that Sunshine Stewart was murdered, they have yet to say how she was murdered. They are not releasing her cause of death at this point. All state police are really saying publicly is that they're chasing leads as they come in. New reporting, though, today from the Mid-Coast Villager is shedding more light on this investigation. Steve Betts, who's a reporter, has covered Maine for decades, is about to join me, and he says that Stewart's body was found on the south end of 100-Acre Island, which is that island at the center of Crawford Pond. Her paddleboard was found not too far from her body, and she was close to the water. 100-Acre Island, as you see here, it's right at the middle of Crawford Pond. It's run by a land trust, and people can camp on the island, but only with permission from the land trust. It's also a nature preserve. Now, a key part of this story also is that the waterfront of Crawford Pond, all of it is private property, so there's no public beach or public boat ramp. The campground that Stewart was staying at is on the north side of the pond, but it's a private campground, so think of it like a hotel where people would check in to be able to stay on the campground. The Mid-Coast Villager is also reporting that state police are asking men who live around Crawford Pond to voluntarily submit their DNA. Also, the owner of the campground where Sunny Stewart was staying has been posting some updates on Facebook, though her community page is now private. She has said she's cooperated with the investigation, and her campground is where state police have been staging to access the water. She just is not interested in doing media interviews. But you can see in this post here where it's telling people who have security cameras or game cameras on their property to reach out in hopes that their camera may have caught something out of the ordinary or any potential suspects, anything that could help move this investigation forward. It's important to note, once again, it's all private property. Maine State Police do have a tip line. You can see it mentioned here in the bottom of this Facebook post, asking people to text MESTIP, MESS tip, to 847-411, or if anybody has information, they can call Maine State Police at 207-624-7076. Join us now, one of the people who have been covering this case closely. Steve Betts is a reporter with the Mid-Coast Villager. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. I know you've been working on this story every day. I mean, what are some of the latest pieces of information you have as far as trying to find the person who killed Sunshine Stewart?
So today in the Mid-Coast Villager on our website, I've posted a story that details where her body was located. The Rockland Fire Department assisted in the search when they believed this was simply a missing paddleboater case. And the drone located the paddleboard just on the shore of the southeast end of 100-Acre Island, which is in the middle of Crawford Pond in Union. So then the searchers from the Maine Warden Service were directed to that area, and they found her body right next to the paddleboard, right on the shore of that part of the island. And the second new thing that came out in today's story was a person informed me that Maine State Police are asking for men who live around Crawford Pond to voluntarily give DNA samples.
And those are considering we haven't really had a lot of updates. It seems like from at least Maine State Police going forward. At this point, we still don't know the cause of death.
We do not know the cause of death. The only thing they've said so far is the first press release said that based on the circumstances of how she was found, that it was suspicious. And then after the autopsy was done by the Maine medical examiner's office, the Maine State Police said the cause of death was homicide, but not detailing what that homicide was.
And going back to how her body was found, it wasn't, because I know when I look at a map of Crawford Pond, you have that 100-acre island that's kind of in the middle area off of where she would have launched from, I guess, the campground. She was still on the shore is where her body was. It wasn't like she was in the middle of 100-acre island. She had been not far from the water.
Correct. She was found on the shore. Whether that was right in the water, that detail I have not gotten yet. Whether she was like right on the shore or right on the water next to the shore. But it was right next to the shore, next to a paddleboard.
And we've seen pictures of Crawford Pond. It seems very pretty. I read that it's really all private property, like around the water area. It's not like there's like a public beach where people go. For people who have never been, what's the layout of this pond?
Well, it's kind of a long lake. It's like elongated, and it is all private. Everything, all the water, the lake pond front property are privately owned. Now, people do use the campground, Micmac Campground in Union, to launch kayaks or canoes, boats, but they need to get permission from the campground and they have to pay a fee to the campground. Other than that, the only way to get there would be if you own a piece of property. There's a number of docks. If you look on a Google map, you'll see a number of little docks that are privately owned. So those would be the only way you could get onto the lake pond.
And
it's called Crawford Pond. I keep calling it lake. Sorry.
I do as well, because it is, I mean, by pond standards, it seems, that there's a good amount of area that you can go through, especially if you were on a paddleboard. As far as 100-acre island, I know it's like a nature preserve. Can people camp on that island?
It is a nature preserve. The island is 99% of the island is owned by the Georges River Land Trust. And so they've created a nature trail out there, and they allow people to go out there during the day. And with permission of the land trust, you can overnight camp there. And that was one of the stories that I wrote, I think it was over the weekend, that there was a family. There was a man and a woman and their two children, young children, were camping out there last week when the homicide occurred. And according to the woman, from a post she put on Facebook, was the Warden Service and State Police spoke to them the night that she was found and asked them a few questions, but never said that there's a homicide involved. Now that, I don't know if that means they talked to them before they found the body or after. But the woman said, they asked, well, are we safe to stay here? And she said, the state police said, oh yes, you can finish your vacation here. And the woman claimed she didn't know anything about the homicide until the day they were leaving later in the week, even though she had posted photos on the Crawford Lake Association Facebook page. And of course, everyone else was posting on that Facebook page about the body being found and then the homicide being determined. So it's the most unusual case I've ever dealt with. I've been covering news in this region for 44 years, and it's the most baffling case. There was one case about 25 years ago in Rockland, which is only about 20 minutes away, where a woman was shot in her apartment, and it took a week before someone was arrested. But this is now 2 weeks, and there's no one so far. There's no one been arrested.
Well, and it seems like, at least from the Maine State Police and a lot of the statements they've given, is like, hey, we're following leads, but from not giving out the cause of death and then not really having a lot, really, and I understand investigations, you try to keep some things close to the vest, but just what stands out to you with just kind of the lack of information that we're getting from the Maine State Police? Is that typical in some of these stories that you've covered working with them?
Well, I mean, years ago, you would get more information, not a lot of details. They were good at talking, like the former communications director for the Maine Department of Public Safety was a former radio announcer, and he would answer a few questions, but not anything detailed. Now we're not really getting anything, but I was in contact with the communications director for the Public Safety Department today, and she said she understands people are concerned, people have questions, but they believe that given out techniques, whether my question to them today was, are you asking for DNA samples from men that live around there? And she said they're not going to discuss their techniques or any evidence that they found. They fear that would harm, impede their investigation. But we just haven't had one that's gone this long in this area. I mean, there've been cases in Maine where there's been unsolved murders or murders where it takes quite a while. But for Knox County, this is the longest in 45 years that they have not apprehended somebody or arrested them for a homicide.
What's the mood like when you go out in the community and you talk to people about this case?
I mean, I live in Rockland. I base most of my stories in Rockland, which is the county seat of Knox County, where Union is located. Union's 20 minutes away, but everyone's talking about it. Everybody's talking about it, and I know that men are saying they're concerned for the safety of their wives and daughters, and women are concerned for their own safety. So there is a climate of fear. But we don't know. Was it somebody she knew? Was it a random stranger? We don't know. So the state police have said to be vigilant and to be familiar with your surroundings, which is kind of a subtle way of saying there is a danger, but how high the danger, we don't know.
When you've talked to people who knew Sunshine Stewart, it seems like she was a very independent person, very talented in a lot of different ways. What stands out to you about who she was?
Two things based on I've talked with three people who were friends of hers, and of course I've seen on social media she's made friends all over the place. Is that she's a strong-willed woman, independent definitely is the best way to say that. But she was also the ability to pick up on anything. She rebuilt her house. She was a waitress. She was a bartender. She was fishing, commercial fishing boats. But she also was so easy to make friends with. And if you became a friend of hers, you were in her circle, and she didn't forget you. And if you hadn't been in contact with her for months, and you ran into her or called her, you would pick up the conversation that you'd had months earlier. It was just she was that kind of person.
What's the reaction? And I mean, I know that anyone who has a friend who's murdered, it's in so many cases you're not expecting it to happen. But the idea, because it does seem she was so beloved by so many people, what's the reaction that so many of those people you've talked to have had that she would be killed this way?
It's disbelief, some anger that who could have done this, but I think disbelief. I mean, they're obviously still grieving, and of course, not the fact that no one's been apprehended yet. makes it that more difficult because they don't know why. I mean, obviously there's not going to be a good answer of why, but I think simply having that information offers some solace to them if someone's caught and if they're convicted. You're arrested doesn't mean you did it. It's innocent until proven guilty at a trial. So,
What for you, as you go out and you're covering this story, I'm sure every single day, what are some of I mean, obviously the cause of death is something that's a top of mind question for so many people, but what are some of the questions that you have as you go out into the community and you try to figure out what the story is going to be the next day as we're waiting to learn more information?
well, I've kind of almost exhausted. I mean, I talk to anybody and everybody that I run into that I believe might have information. I do that all the time anyways, on whatever story I'm writing on. Of course, this story has more urgency and far more interest than a city council story or a school board story. But there, other than knowing if they have a suspect, I mean, I think that's the thing. People want to know if there's a suspect. So those are the questions I'm asking. But I have exhausted pretty much everybody I know that would have any information regarding that. So right now, I'm not sure what new other until the state police announced something. I'm not sure if there is any more information to be gotten.
And then just a couple more for you. When it comes to that area, I think of Maine in the summertime. It's such a great vacation spot for so many people. Are the people who live around Crawford Pond year-round residents, or do you have a lot of like summertime people who come and then go somewhere else for the winter?
There's a mix. There are people who live there year-round, and there are people who are seasonal. It's like that in almost all the town communities in Knox County. Our population swells in the summertime. I mean, you don't have a lot of traffic from November through March, but starting in April, people start coming. And since the pandemic, a lot more people have moved into the area and lived here year round.
And for her time at the Micmac campsite, I mean, she had only been there for a couple days, right? Had she made any contact with people who are also like, what some of the, I guess, if you were able to speak with anybody who saw her, what some of the reaction was, or I guess, what did people think of her who had met her?
I have not talked to any of the campers there. The Micmac campground, they really they don't want the media to interfere with their visitors, their guests, stay there. So, for instance, the Crawford Lake Association Facebook page is run by the owner of the Micmac campground. And I'd been posing questions to people about that. And I was blocked from that Facebook page. And then they took it down as a public page. Now it's a private page, and said they're not going to take any new members in until this is settled. They think it's intrusive to the people who are there. And I mean, obviously people who live around the lake, not just from the campground, but people who live around the lake apparently want their privacy and don't want boarded. Sorry, phone call came in. Don't want the media interfering with that.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I'm sure, when you move to a place like, Crawford Pond, you're looking to get away, and then suddenly all the attention of the national media also coming in. Steve Betts, it was great to speak with you. You can read Steve's work on the Mid-Coast Villager, new reporting out today involving the case of Sunshine Stewart. Thank you for taking the time to be with us, Steve. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
As police search for Sunshine Stewart's killer, her friends continue to remember a person who, as you just heard Steve describe, was fiercely independent and talented, had many different jobs in life. She was working as a contractor. She had been a boat captain. She worked in the fishing industry, which is very popular in Maine. She also had this tattoo on her back, a life motto, if you will. If you don't like your life, change it. Friends continue to raise money for funeral expenses for Sunshine Stewart. You can see this GoFundMe that is up right now, and it has raised more than $33,000 in the roughly 2 weeks since Sunshine Stewart lost her life. That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law&Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.